Hello, welcome to Mchungaji Mtandaoni, a companion in your spiritual journey. We're grateful that you've joined us once again and that we can be able to share together in things that are related to lifestyle, in Bible studies, in just talking together as we think about our journey towards heaven. How has your week been? The week that is ending today, starting from 4th until today, many of the Seventh-day Adventist churches have been having week of stewardship. Today is also the end of that event that I talked about, which is Now for Christ. And we are grateful for the great things that God has been doing. So today's topic is, I wanted to talk about why I don't give my money to the church. Very interesting. When I was younger, every time we used to go to church, we used to run to parents during the offertory. I'm a pastor's kid, and so run to mom or run to dad, and they would give us, back then it was like the 100 shilling coin or the 50 shilling coin, and we can be able to give as offering to the church. And when we talk about stewardship in itself, the church itself asks for us to be faithful in returning tithe and our offerings. And sometimes when I grew up, after the time when parents used to give me money, now when I grew up and it was time to give my own money, it ended up not working because I was like, hey, this is a lot. This is so much. Like, why am I giving this money? Like, why should I give this? Or sometimes you just give, you give a little bit, but you don't give what is rightfully belonging to God. And so it made me think, am I giving my money to church? Is this what God is asking me to do? To give my money to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, to give my money to a particular church or to the organization. But when you look at the Bible itself instructs that our giving is not because we are giving to a church, but it's because we are giving to God. And so when you look at 2 Corinthians, when Paul was talking to this church in Corinthians, and he spoke of something that is so prudent for us when we think about this topic. Before I even talk about now my personal experience and how we can now just apply it to the life of today. When you look at 2 Corinthians and you read chapter 8, and he speaks there, because he puts the foundation that our giving roots not because we want to give to a church or to give to a person, to an organization, but it is rooted by giving to God himself. He uses the church of Macedonia as an example to the church in Corinth, to try to show them how they, despite the fact that they didn't have much, gave faithfully. And he says in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 verses 1, "Moreover, brethren, we make known to you the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia." And so this giving was because of the grace of God. It is acknowledging that God has been gracious, that he has blessed you, that he has added something in your life. And so our giving, it is not because we feel like the church is a charity case, or we feel like a certain endeavor that we're doing is because they need us, but it's because we have experienced the grace of God in our lives. And the second thing that I can notice in this chapter, and you can take a look at this chapter, it's quite interesting, and you can see the way that we are not giving money to God, but literally we are giving ourselves to God. When we are giving, we are not helping the church, but we are giving our lives to God, acknowledging that it is him who has blessed us. When you notice verses 5, it says, And not only as we hoped, like the fact that they gave gifts, but they first gave themselves to the Lord and then to us by the will of God. So the giving, the pattern that was given by the churches of Macedonia that Paul was praising so much, is the fact that they actually were giving themselves to God. They were not trying to impress the apostles. They were not trying to impress anyone, but they were doing it because they were being faithful to God, giving themselves to God. And the third thing that I want you to observe of the reason that Paul was advocating that the churches of Corinthians could also support and give, you can see it in verse 14, where it says, but by an equality that now at this time your abundance may supply their lack, that their abundance also may supply your lack, that there may be equality. In other words, he says, when we are giving, we are supporting each other. We are sharing the blessings that God has given us. We are supplying areas where we might be strong, but they are weak. And they too can supply. God can supply all our needs. And so with this, it really opened my eyes that I am not giving to the church, but I am giving to God. And so it took me in a journey, because sometimes you even try to even think like, okay, am I going to give my gross or my net? Sometimes we think, you know what, I have been cut so much, like the money that I was supposed to be given, it's like 2 million, and the actual net that I'm receiving after the tax, after the NSSF, after the what else, NHIF, all those things. After that, you discover the money is not a lot. It could be 1.3, it could be 1.4, 1.5, and etc. And sometimes we feel like, you know what, God, just accept, this is what I've received in my hands, receive this. But God challenges us that, you are not giving to someone, but you're giving to me. You're giving yourself to me first. You are simply saying, trust me. And so it took me through a journey that sometimes I'm even receiving monetary gifts, and when you're receiving monetary gifts, you're like, this is an increase. I gotta give faithfully. You are given that 10,000, you're given that 20,000, you're given that 50,000, you're given that bonus, and you don't just say, hey, I gave my offering and my tithe in my salary, my yearly or my monthly salary, and that's enough. But it's just that constant habit of I want to give to God because I acknowledge He is the source of my blessings, and I am actually giving my life to Him. And also I thought about one of the things that have really been helpful for me and my wife is like when we receive the money, the first thing that we do is separate the 10% for tithe and also the 10% plus for offering. And when you separate it as the first thing and you've already put it aside, it's no longer your money. It's there is this a mental shift that happens in your mind that, you know what, this is not my money anymore. You cannot set a budget for that money because you know it belongs to the church. It needs to be taken back to the Lord. And it becomes so helpful that when it comes to days of worship, when we go to church on Saturdays and all we have to do is take the apportioned money from that section that we have set apart already. We have already put it aside. We have already prayed for it. We have already committed it to God. And this is really helpful because I remember there were times when I want to give. You find yourself that you did not prepare the offering, and you go to church and it reaches the time for offering, and as pastors, you are up there in the pulpit. Sometimes you can feel guilty, like, hey, I also need to give, I can't stay here. And this is such a wrong motivation of giving. And so you go grab your wallet and then you check and then you look and you're like, don't I have a smaller note in here? Don't I have like a 2,000, a 5,000 that I can give? Like sometimes even giving that 10,000 is so difficult because you're like, this is a lot. It's really disturbing my budget. But I found it's so much easier when you have already set apart the money. And so whether you're taking 10,000, whether you're taking 20, whether you're taking 50, it no longer hurts you, or because in human nature we are selfish. And so even if the money belongs to God, it still hurts. Try giving a child something and then ask again, like give them sweets or give them popcorn and then try to take a little bit. They usually react because the human nature is selfish. We don't even think that the popcorn that the person is asking is the same popcorn that the person gave me. And that's the natural human mind. But when we separate it early, when we put it aside and we are now taking from what has already been separated, it makes it so easy and such a blessing, because when a need arises, it doesn't hurt you. You hear this person has a need, you can give because you know that there is already a section, and you are not actually removing from your lack, but you are giving from the abundance which God has given you. And tithe, we know 10% belongs to God, and it's from our gross that we are giving to God. But our offering, we could even be creative. You could be creative, you with your family. Like, think about the different avenues that you can contribute according to the need. There are students who are needy, people who are needy who come to church. There is the education fund, education offering. There is the media, Hope Channel, and other communication offering. You can give a camp meeting offering. You can give camp meeting expense. You can give church budget. You can give construction of the local conference and fields. You could give Buku project, which is a project which is supporting University of Arusha, the academic institution here in Tanzania. And when you indicate this, so you could have different ways of just doing it. Even the 13th Sabbath. I mean, I've been caught unawares several times where 13th Sabbath offering, which is usually, for those who don't know, it's the last Sabbath of the quarter. We usually give an offering during that Sabbath to support mission work around the world. And sometimes I found myself that I've not contributed for quarters and years. I've not contributed, but because you've already set it apart, you can look forward to give on the 13th Sabbath. You are not caught unawares or by surprise. And so, why don't I give my money to the church? Because I give it to God. I give it because my life belongs to God. I don't give it to impress a church or to impress the summary sheets or the eye of the church as we know it here in Tanzania. We do it because we are in a relationship with God and we are in love with Him, and we acknowledge that He is the one who has given us. So there is no limit to what we can return to Him, and also we can give to others who are in need. May God help you. May God help me. I know I am just in the beginning of my journey of faithful giving back to God, that we can be faithful in giving to the Lord, not a person, not an organization, but may that be your habit today and forever. Thank you for joining me. Remember to subscribe, like, and share, and let the others know as we journey together in this walk towards heaven. Join us again next time. Chungaji.